Hello, everyone, and welcome to Snap Take. What a freaking OTA. They have changed so much with this one. We've got an update to Hela, who is now fundamentally redesigned. Spider-Man and Scream have changed. There is a ton to talk about here. Let's get it kicked off with Scream. Scream goes from a 2-3 to a 2-2, and the big change, she no longer gains power if it can't be taken, such as due to Luke Cage. Luke Cage is really likely the only way that matters, but she will keep the power she gets before Luke is played. That's going to mean that the opponent has to play Luke early to really counter Scream, which is actually pretty big news. So, um, first, I told you Scream stats were through the roof. She was one of the best cards in the game. Internally, Glenn told us, and people didn't believe me, that Scream was some of the best stats. Well, maybe you'll believe it now. Scream has been knocked down a peg, a whole peg. She's now dead to Luke. Just completely. If you play her on 2, the opponent plays Luke on 3, you wasted 2 energy, you played a 2-2. Her play rate is going to wax and wane based on how much Luke is present. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. She was an easy S tier card, but in the current meta, she's down to a B tier, pending more testing. However, the testing means we can at least run Rogue, and maybe we can run Red Guardian and Enchantress in her decks. If those mean that we can actually stop Luke Cage, then all of a sudden she's totally fine, and she's still an S tier card, right? We're going to have to figure out if those builds are viable, if those builds make sense, if there's enough other things for those to counter for this to still be really good. But if that's the case, and right now, Rogue, Red Guardian, and Enchantress are all really good, it's a Moonstone release week, right? So it seems like this is going to work out just fine, but we're going to have to really think about this going forward. If the meta lets you run those cards in that deck, then I think this is going to be really strong. There's also one other thing to talk about that we'll get to when we get to the deck, but first, they did change one of her support cards. One of Scream's major support cards was Spider-Man, who went from a 3-5 to a 2-4. That's a really big buff. I know losing a power sucks, but having the ability go on a 2-cost body is huge. He's better. He was a C overall in a B and Scream decks, and he still falls more or less there. The benefit is in the things you can play with him, right? You don't usually want to play him on 2. What you want to do is you want to play him on 3 with a Kingpin, or on 2 if you can get a Miles and something else out next turn, right? Or you can play him with Scream or Craven on turn 4, and that's going to be really powerful. Now, that play on turn 4, assuming your opponent doesn't have a Luke out yet, right? You have a Scream out, you play Spider-Man, you've played 6 energy, but you're stealing 4, so you have a 10 power play on turn 4. That's pretty damn good. You love to see it. I think that this is a really, really positive change for Spider-Man that keeps him relevant in these decks, because honestly, he was starting to get cut. So I'm happy to see this change for Spider-Man, and I'm really, really sad about Scream, who is one of the cheapest decks you can get into. Now, the first deck to really consider with Scream is the Scream 2099 list that's been everywhere since Cam Best made it. This has been one of the best decks in Marvel Snap. Notable thing, this deck cannot run Enchantress. We can, if necessary, find space, largely likely by cutting Kingpin. We can find space for Red Guardian along with Rogue, but that's rough, right? Because if we go Scream, and then they go Luke. Now you're spending your turn 4 going Rogue or Doom, Red Guardian instead of Doom. So I think that this list is the one that's really going to suffer, except that there's another change which makes Doom 2099 stronger that we'll get to later. So when you compare those two things, it's going to like be a really like interesting checks and balances, because the change that makes Doom 29 and 2099 better means that this deck should be better. But this deck has less room to run like Rogue and Red Guardian than the other decks. So how do these things balance out? Well, time is going to have to tell for us. Right now, I think that this deck is still going to be a tier 1 deck, although it is going to be like less one of the very best and more one of the lower end of the top 10 decks. The other Scream deck I want to look at is the classic that does not run any of the Doom 2099 stuff, and this deck I think can run Enchantress. In addition, I think we could likely cut Miles Morales or Stegron and get in an extra Rogue or Red Guardian, and I think this deck is really going to sing. The win rate on this deck has always been severely underrated. It's always been one of the best decks in Marvel Snap, no matter where you look along pre-infinite, regular infinite, or high infinite. This has always been one of the best and the best performing decks. I check stats all the freaking time. Our best stats show it, second Tinder's best stats show it. This is the deck I really want to know. Can we support running 2 of Enchantress, Rogue, Red Guardian? If the answer to that ends up being yes, then I'm very excited to keep playing this deck? If the answer to that ends up being no, I think that this deck is really going to fall off and could even end up being a second tier deck instead of a first tier deck. I'm again really sad that they did this to Scream. I know the win rate was high, but people weren't complaining or overplaying it, and B, it was a really great budget option for people. This deck had just Scream and Cannonball as high series stuff, and you don't really need Cannonball. So with that change, it does make me sad that they're getting rid of a budget option in this way. But most of the answers that you need, Rogue and Enchantress, are still earlier series cards. So if this deck still works, you should still be able to play a budget version. We could even cut Cannonball at that point and even get cheaper, which doesn't seem terrible, especially again in Moonstone Week, where Enchantress and Rogue are going to have all this extra value. Before we get to the next card that changed, please hit that sub button. We cover Marvel Snap more thoroughly than anyone. This is our, I want to say, like 8th video of the week already. We do at least 7 days a week of Marvel Snap videos, at least 3 brand new decks every single day. Don't miss out. Hit that sub button. Your like and comment also can enable you, as long as you're subbed, to win an Iron Patriot. We give away 1 a week, 5 at the start of the season, but then otherwise 1 a week. So what you have to do is you have to hit that sub and like, and then later this video, I'm going to ask you to leave a comment. You leave that comment and you are entered to win Iron Patriot. Nice and easy. Our next change is Luke Cage, who goes from a 3/3 to a 2/2 to a 3/2. The big change here is they're going to somehow split his abilities. They recognize that he does a lot, being an offensive card when you want to run your own man things and U.S. agents and hazmats and so on, and covering the whole board and stopping all your opponent's stuff and stopping multiple locations. So they're saying they're going to split Luke Cage's abilities at some point down the line, but for the time being, he is one of the very most important cards in the game. He is like the entire game is sort of built around him, right? Affliction stuff without Luke Cage in the meta just overruns everything. It becomes so far and away the best thing to do, the most consistent thing to do if you want to win games. Like bounce move would still have a higher ceiling, but bounce move doesn't always go off. Whereas affliction, if there's no Luke Cage, it just feels damn near unbeatable. He's an S tier card before this. He's an S tier card after this. Do not cut him outside of one deck that we're going to get to later at the end of the video. Spoiler, it's Hela. That Hela deck doesn't want him anymore. But outside of that, every deck that wants him still wants him. For example, here's a deck that you would go like, why do I really need this for him? For Luke for, right? Well, you want Luke largely to combo with anti-venom, but also just to turn off all the obnoxious shit your opponent does. Having that extra ongoing is really helpful. This is one of the best decks in the game from Derek. We've had this list for a while. It's been out. It's known. It puts out a crazy amount of power. And one of the ways it loses is that Affliction can go over the top. A card like Man Thing can just say, no, all your extra power doesn't matter anymore. Well, Luke Cage stops that and is so strong in this list while also having the offensive potential with Anti-Venom. That's why it got changed. Don't fricking cut it. Clear? Good. Next up, we have U.S. Agent, and this is a huge one. U.S. Agent remains a 2/3, but now his ongoing only gives 4, 5, and 6 cost cards a -3 instead of -4. He was an A tier card, a borderline S tier card, one of the best cards in the game. But this is going to hurt. It's not that big a difference if there's only one card there, right? It's when there's 2 cards and you go from 211 to 29 that you start to feel the difference. A 2 power difference is huge. But if there's 3 cards there, and that's rough, right? If there's 3 cards there, he goes from a 215 to a 212, and that's gigantic. In particular, I'm thinking of Doom 2099 decks, which get significantly better with this change. I think Doom 2099 just got a huge buff because there's usually 3 Doom bots, right? Which means you're just getting basic evenness with US Agent. But now if you play Doom Classic, you're way over the top. That seems like it's probably pretty good. This otherwise was just a complete lane winner. It dominated those matchups. I still think it's good in those matchups, but it's no longer completely insane and dominant. I think he's going to be less prevalent. I think he goes in quite a fewer decks, but I do think he's very good. This is a secret buff for Tribunal Iron Man decks in general. Tribunal and sorry, also Iron Man decks. Putting him in an Iron Man lane when your opponent onslaughted and then them getting -8 is very different than them getting -6 as a general rule. While Tribunal in general was just it was a pain in the ass to have to deal with this. It's still gonna be a pain in the ass, but like him having more power means it's less so. My hot take is I think that people are going to overrate how much worse it is. I still think this is a great card. I think it goes from like S high A to low A, but I still think he's great. I still think he goes in decks just like this, which I think are still tier 1 decks. This is the only nerf to this deck, which has been one of the best decks in the game for the past 2 seasons. This small good cards list from, again, Derek, because Derek's a beast at creating decks. But I think that this deck is still fine, right? Like, I think it loses a little bit more to absolute top end stuff than it did before, which is what they were trying to do with this change. US Agent basically said it trivialized some matchups, right? It says those matchups are still matchups you have to play now. And that's fine. At the end of the day, I think US Agent is still totally worth it. Hey, we're hosting a major tournament. It's called the Snap Judgments League. In it, you play one game a week in a pod of 30. The winners of that pod go to a top 8 of the pod. The winner there gets a season pass. The winners of each pod, each little mini pod tournament, get put into a top 8 where the winner gets to compete for up to 400, well, gets to compete to actually $400 in prizes. You can play with multiple Great Marvel Snap creators. Entry is $2 on our Patreon. So $2 to have a chance to win both the season pass and then up to $400 if you're interested. If you want to play in Marvel Snap, please do check it out at patreon.com/snapjudgments. You can also, please, if you're willing, check out our Discord if you have any questions. Our Discord is linked in the description to this and every video. Also, thank you to Primed Mind, the wonderful Primed Mind app, which sponsors this tournament. All right, Kazar, a Series 1 card goes from a 4/4 to a 4/5. Series 1 cards are rarely changed, but we have 2 here. This is the most whatever change of the whole patch to me. I don't really care about this. This still goes in the exact same decks, Thanos Zoo and regular Zoo, and it's a bit better in them. Next week, we do have Marvel Boy and Kara coming back, so maybe like that can help. There's also another card. The deck we're gonna look at, this very cool butt list, got a card nerfed and another card buffed in this list. So Kazar being in that list, being buffed, means that that list is +2 buff, right? I think that this is probably a positive. I mean, look, this is definitely a positive. It's more power, but I think this is probably going to win a reasonable amount more games for Zoo, which remains one of the best decks that no one talks about because it's insanely boring. Zoo and the Surtur deck are still really great decks. They're still super powerful and win a lot of games, and no one plays them because they're relatively dull. But I think that this is a way to say, hey, go play Kazar, dummies. And this is Butts, the combo. You can play an obviously basic Zoo deck, but everyone knows a basic Zoo deck, right? Gilgamesh, Mockingbird, and most of the rest of these cards, a few more ones. This is Butts' version of it, where you want to end the game by, or you can end the game by going Blink into M'Baku and then getting yourself a big card. Ideally, not Wiccan. Any of Kazar, Blue Marvel, or Onslaught are amazing at that point, as is Shauna, honestly. Um, cool list, very, very powerful. Um, Worth messing with. Generally speaking, again, even classic Zoo, again, Gilgamesh Mockingbird Zoo instead of Blink Iron Patriot Zoo, right? And then you want Marvel Boy for that version, are still like stellar lists. They're really, really powerful. Great. Good on them for giving a little buff to a card that could use it. Hydra Bob is dead. 1/5 to a 1/4. The most versatile, the new Jeff, has been taken out of rotation, I think. He went from S to C. I hope he can maintain a B tier, but I strongly doubt it. I think his only real use now is that Iron Patriot really wants some early power, and there's not really a better early power card than him in Snap. So, I mean, I guess Iron Patriot Hydra Bob is still a thing, so he's still going to go in decks for at least this month, but I expect him to slowly fade from relevance. Is he better now than Silver Sable, for example? In Iron Patriot decks, yes. In other decks, maybe not, right? Like, probably not. Because Silver Sable at least has a chance to hit something good. The snap thing that he does has always been both a positive and a negative. We do know how to play around it now if you've been playing him. I hate this change. I really liked this card, and I thought it was in a good place. Even if it was too relevant, I would have rather see more ones come up to be more relevant than Hydra Bob be torn down. But I do think Hydra Bob is a card that you don't really want to buy right now. That's why I get a million questions on my Discord all the time, everywhere all the time. What should I buy? What should I buy? What should I buy? And my answer is always nothing until right after an OTA. Right after an OTA, you can make choices. Now I don't think you should buy Hydra Bob. Wiccan wasn't changed, right? People were like, Hydra Bob or Wiccan? Well, fucking buy Wiccan now. Cool. Unless you want to wait till March and get Wiccan in spotlights. But buy Wiccan now. Hydra Bob is now a significantly worse card. Toxic Soul Hand is the Hydra Bob deck that I like best. I featured this in yesterday afternoon's video if you'd like to see a full breakdown. I love this list. Hydra Bob goes in a million lists. I just wanted this version because this is the same use that Hydra Bob's going to have from now on. It's fundamentally just an extra one that you can play to get your Iron Patriot off. That's the whole use of this card now. It's fine, I guess, in Moon Girl Double Up, but like I don't know. I don't really care, right? It's now worse than Titania in that list because you basically never played it early. So I don't know what to say except that this one makes me a little bit sad. It's a good list, right? It's a good card still, but it went from but it's a very cuttable good card. Whereas before it was stellar. I hate to see things people bought be hit in that manner. Hey, we go live on Twitch all the time. We will be live on Twitch to frickin' night covering this OTA with the great Ika and the great Toxic Soul King to break everything down from the Twitch and the OTA. That means all the data mines and all the card changes will be covered in great detail in a conversation, which means you'll get some great insight. Come check it out on Twitch. This one will not be live on YouTube, so check it out at about 8:30 p.m. Eastern, i.e. after my dinner plans wrap up. Our season pass question is, what's your review of the OTA? What do you think of it overall? What are your favorite parts, least favorite parts, etc.? Drop it in the comments. Remember, this is your chance to win an Iron Patriot. Sentry goes from 4-8 to 4-9, as does the Void. I like that they keep them at least tied. Sentry should probably just be a 10 again. 8 wasn't enough, and 9 is way better, but I think 10 is really, really where he belongs, both from a flavor standpoint and from a power standpoint. Annihilus was the best card in the game for about like 4 or 5 months, and so they nerfed the crap out of Sentry to make up for it. And he basically fell out of the meta, right? He became a D tier card. This can push him back up to an A tier card where he was at the start of this, but I think it more likely makes the list and thus Sentry a B. That is a huge upgrade, right? Went from a D to a B. I hope these decks can come back. I think they're really powerful and really fun. I'm worried this isn't the right meta for him because we're in a very cloggy meta, a very fill up the board meta with all the like Victoria Hand that's now like the meta card. So if that's the case, then this is worse. But if that's not the case, then this is still a thing worth doing. All right, so this is a list that I never got to feature. Revis, the great Revis, has been playing this anti-venom list. You might see that we've got multiple changed cards in here. Would I cut Hydra Bob here? Damn right, I probably would. I don't know for what off the top of my head. You just want something with reasonable power, but it's something you can change with Cersei, so you don't really care if it's like a little bit worse. It might even just be a debris at this point, right? Okay, so Luke stays in the list. I told you, just don't cut Luke. Luke with anti-venom is amazing. The idea here is that you really want to go Sentry and Annihilus, and if you don't draw, or Sentry and Cersei, right? If you don't draw any of them, anti-venom is your trick. You anti-venom, and ideally you hit Sentry and Annihilus or Cersei. That's what you're looking for. If you hit one of those, you play Sentry and Annihilus or Sentry and Cersei, and then you win. I don't know how else to say it, right? Like you just put out 9 power and then you got like multiple extra cards and you're super, super strong at that point. It's really, really cool and very powerful. Remember, there is in February an amazing gold anti-venom bundle for 4,500 gold that everyone should be saving up for. I will be doing a giant bundle review, bundle data mine review tomorrow if you're interested in learning more about that. But for the time being, just know that this is a really good list and it got better in a real way, like not like a fake way. I think that this might be a legit list right now and one I'm considering looking into playing a lot more. Next up, we have another Series 1 card change. This is so rare. We got another one to come to. Onslaught goes from 6-7 to 6-8. This is another one that's kind of whatever. This is a bigger deal than Kazar because Onslaught goes into more stuff. The idea though for Onslaught is if he does his thing properly, you usually win, right? If you can get an Onslaught Blue Marvel board fill, you've won. If you can get an Onslaught Patriot board fill, you won. If you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. He's an A tier card in the right meta, B in the wrong one, and this doesn't really change that. I think we should be exploring more of popping him. I think we should be exploring more of popping him directly on top of Moonstone. I think doubling Moonstone's ability to double to copy something else would be really, really strong. So, but either way, I think this is like sort of encouraging us to do that. I think he's going to be really good. Gregor has this Moonstone Tribunal. Again, there's a classic version of this that's cheaper that runs Ms. Marvel. But I again want to explore more of Moonstone Onslaught, so that's what this does. It basically says if I can go Moonstone Onslaught and get a Mystique on there or Ravone on there, I've got like a free Iron Man to do things with. I can just put an insane Blue Marvel. I can rogue off their stuff and do crazy stuff. Gregor's had a lot of success with this, so I want to give it a look, give it a shout, and it got a little better, right? Luke is a little bit worse, and maybe people mistakenly stopped playing him. U.S. Agent got a little bit worse, and U.S. Agent is really strong into this. And Onslaught got a little better. So this list is significantly better than it was a few hours ago. Next up, another Series 1 change. This is my favorite Series 1 change. I think this one matters. Mr. Fantastic goes from a 3-2, adjacent locations have +2 power, to a 3-1, ongoing adjacent locations have +3 power. That's only a 1 power difference overall, but when you start doubling it, much like the U.S. Agent change, this ends up being huge. I really like this card. I think this can be a B tier card. He was useless, but Captain America is coming. Sam Wilson Captain America is coming with regular Captain America. Check this morning's video for already really good Captain America deck. If that's legit, then Mr. Fantastical is legit in it. Period. All right, like if you can play 2 and end up getting 6 power in both lanes with stuff you want to do anyway, that's amazing. And honestly, just getting if you can play him in the middle, right? He's a 3-7. That's great stats. That's great stats. He was a 3-6, which is fine. 3-7 is literally seriously a step up. We can get to 3-6. 3-7s are relatively rare. I'm on this. I'm in on this. I think this is going to be a B tier card. Our friend Ryan Wood, one of our wonderful, wonderful patrons, has this really, really cool list that we featured ages back. We cut Spider-Ham from it and I don't know, Professor X, and added Moonstone and Mr. Fantastic. Your basic goal here is to copy Ms. Marvel, right? You want to go Ms. Marvel into Onslaught and then copy Onslaught with Mystique, and then you get 30 power in both of the side lanes, assuming you can get 2 different cost cards there. That's pretty nice, right? Well, we now have a backup plan of Mr. Fantastic into Moonstone, into we're obviously gonna have to magic to do this, into Onslaught, into Mystique, which is going to be still crazy, crazy power. We've got +6. We got 28 power both lanes that way, which is just an awesome way to go about things, right? Like you love to see it. Actually, I think it might be more. Math is hard. I teach English. Either way, this is going to be really cool. I think this deck gets significantly better. Ryan, if you see this, shoot me a message. I'm very excited. Test this out. Let me know how it goes. I think that this is going to be a real secret meta list. I'm very excited, like genuinely super excited for it. Finally, we have the big change, Hela. I know I made you wait, sorry. Second Dinner put it at the end of their notes. That's why it's at the end. I just went in the order that they gave us. So, Hela is a 6/7 on reveal. Resurrect all cards you discarded to random locations with -3 power. No more! On reveal, for each different cost among them, resurrect a card you discarded to random location. So she will now grab one of each cost that's discarded, which is an insanely huge difference. I have no idea if this is good. My guess is it's good, and they're trying to force us to play it. She's a 6/9, which is also really good. I also assume that they're going to have something come to synergize this. We know Ghost Rider, Million BC, whatever it's called, the first Ghost Rider, is coming and very likely as a free card. Check the Datamine video from yesterday morning if you're curious. Well, I guess I don't really talk about that. I just note it's coming. So we don't know what it is. It doesn't have text yet, but given what Ghost Rider does, it's very likely to synergize. This is just a mind-bogglingly big change. This was a C card, maybe a low B. Now it's probably a B, but it could be a D. We have no idea. This is a complete redesign, and there's no real way to know. I did take the old Denish shell and try and rework it so that this works. Denish didn't run Death or Lady Sif, so I figured we have to run Death and Sif because that's unique cost. We want to bring back a 12, right? We still want to keep Infinite to bring back a 620. We're happy to bring back Odin if not, or we can play Odin on Ghost Rider to try and get back our Hela as required, right? We're happy to get a Jubilee, which is likely to go get another card, so we can get Jubilee or Ghost Rider back, which are both going to bring back extra cards. We like to use Blink, so we don't really want to get Blink back, but if we do, it's not the end of the world. The card we want to get back is Iron Man. And then Blade helps discard whatever I want of unique cost. Lady Sif will hopefully hit Death, and will hit Infinite or Odin if I don't have Hela yet. And Corvus Glaive is the random discard, but whatever. And Swordmaster is just a nice big discard that synergizes with Iron Man. That has no real danger of hitting Hela. It can hit Blink, Iron Man, and then obviously the cheaper stuff, but you would probably play Blade, Corvus, or Sif before you played Swordmaster. And then getting Swordmaster back isn't terrible, right? So I think that this might be a reasonable build because you're not losing any power anymore, so we don't need Luke. US Agent is way worse. I think that this might be really good. I'm excited to give this one a try. Hopefully it's not too good because the meta is not great when Hela is too good. But yeah, That's where we are. And that's the OTA. Remember to check out our Patreon if you're interested in that tournament, and certain tiers of support come with on-air thanks. I want to say thank you to Abigail Kiesland, Mandatory Burnout, Irregardless, David G. Wingfield, Dirty Casual, Tanton, LAB, FaThorNewman, Inc., I Am Frostman, Hota Navarrete, YOLO Potato, Thinking Poker, Primed Ryan, Ryan Burke, Ryan Wood. Hey, we just talked about him. Primed Ryan is the person who sponsors Prime Mind, sponsoring the tournament. King of Questions, Kertix Lee, coming all the way from Japan, it's Koi Ray, the Great Kazushi, Archangel 3K, all the Ks, Pyrofros, the Goat Seeker, Alode, Quid Pro Joe, and Snap Decisions Joe, Jose's. Jose's, I don't know what that was. Fat Nick, Mr. Kerfuffle, Cables, Ginger Prime, Ginge, Philip Rakovich, Haplo, Kenny Loggins of the Danger Zone, Rob Silverman, The Bizza, Black Jeebus 23, Exorcine, Skippy G, Jessica Gamble, Tommy Nyquist, 1, Successfully Season 1, The King of Bros, The Great Kazoo, Werewolf, Kevsey Hoda, Lunar Chris, Corwin, John Q, Jimmy McHugh, Glam, Colonel Forbin, Yistout, Ace Age, Synth, Mod, Supreme, Models, Green Goblin, Unibot, Flan 56, Steven, Brian Kaufman, Tristan H. Martin, Jason B, Only Fox, Lee, Fuzzy Up, Spectrum X, Hoot, Matt H, DJ Mikey Hijinks, No Freaking Flex, Ocularis, Mr. Cricksterry, BG, Zodrex, The King of Canada, Denman Falcon, Jonesy, The Great Two Ties, The Great Lauren Devs, The Pirate King Tuccrr, and of course Gunny T, where the T stands for. I'll see you tomorrow for that bundle review. Oh no, I'll see you tomorrow for a giant video of what I think the best decks are after the patch, and then Saturday for that bundle review. Time has lost meaning, flat circles, and all that. See you soon. Thanks for watching. Peace.